everybody. Welcome back. I'm so excited to be here. Got an exciting day today. We're going to talk about probate and marketing, two things that you might not think normally go together. But Sharon, see what I tell you? I told you 2 minutes later I would forget. Vornholt,
Vornholt.
pretty close, not without the accent, but an investor out of Louisville, Kentucky, which was when we were wholesaling nationwide. That was one of our best markets.
Mhm.
Um, but listen, guys, it's not too often that I get to interview somebody who has been doing this longer than me. Certainly, there are some people out there, but she has been doing this since 1998, so pre Y2K. For those of you that are even old enough to remember what that is. When you said 1998, that was the first thing I thought of.
Mm,
Homestead,
mm,
during Y2K. But yeah, she's the creator of the Louisville Gals Real Estate blog podcast. She does Let's Talk Real Estate, but really specializes in probate and marketing. So Sharon, thank you so much for popping on today. I have so many questions, and I can't wait to hear all about it.
Well, thanks for having me.
Cool. Well, give us a little bit better kind of background. How did you get started in this? What were you doing before?
Mm,
Like,
mm.
how'd you end up in real estate?
Well, I had growing up, my dad was a general contractor, and I
Yeah.
like to say that being the oldest and most well-behaved child of four, I got to tag along with him. So I learned early on about the fun that was in construction. He did mostly commercial stuff, but then years later, I owned and operated a home inspection business for
Right.
17 very long years. And
Yeah.
during that time period, I met a lot of agents. And one day, along about, I'd been from 1991 till 1998. An agent came in and said, "Would you like to go to a RIA meeting?" And I said something like, "What's a RIA meeting?" And she dragged me to my first meeting. And from that time, from 1998 on, I always went to the RIA meetings. And slowly, just I would do a fix and flip, and then or do a couple and then buy a rental. Kind of went on that slow path.
Sure.
But in 2008, I closed that business and I went to real estate full time. So I'd been doing part time for 10 years by that time.
Yeah.
So I also had found probates at the same time. And if you stop to think back to 2008, it was the best of times and the worst of times. For a lot of people in real estate, it was great.
Mhm.
But I did not want to have a buy and hold property, do a rehab and hope that somebody might be able to get a loan on it. So I flipped over and started wholesaling.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I just said I became an accidental wholesaler. And because I was really good at marketing and lead generation. So that's kind of how I got there. And and I had always worked off market deals, mainly because I didn't want to get in there with a bunch of realtors and other investors and scrap around on the MLS. So I looked at off market deals as kind of the low hanging fruit. And that was always where I got my deals. But once I discovered probates, then I really had what I considered was a gold mine of leads.
Fascinating. So when you went to that first RIA, what was it that kind of attracted you to that and to that life or that world, the investor world? Because I always tell people it's kind of like it happens behind the curtain at the Wizard of Oz, right? There's all this activity that goes on
Mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm.
the general public really doesn't understand or see. So like, what was it that? Yeah, that was
Well,
interesting.
we had a big group. That was 400 or 500 people here in Louisville, and I had no clue what was going on my first couple of meetings. But I learned very quickly to take people aside and talk to them. And to be honest, that was my first inclination that you didn't have to be a realtor to be working in real estate. For a lot of people today, there are a lot of real estate investors, and it's a pretty common thing. But back then, it was a very secluded, very exclusive group of people,
Yeah,
and the realtors were all over here, and the investors were all over there.
they're like
And
boys and girls at the high school dance. Like nobody wanted to
right,
mix.
right, that's
Yeah,
what it was like. But it was fascinating, and it took me about a year to get up the courage to buy my first property. And it's kind of funny now, but I wouldn't even negotiate with the seller. I made my agent friend, who was an investor as agent, I made her negotiate with him because I knew I was just no match for him. I really had no clue what I was doing, but
yeah.
that's how I got my very first deal.
Oh wow, that's fascinating. So so you found it on your own, or did you find it through MLS or through a realtor?
He was wholesaling it into a RIA group.
Oh wow. Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Mhm.
So fast forward 10 years later, you decide to, kind of go full time into real estate,
Mhm.
and that's 2008, which again, like I explained
Mhm.
it, the same thing. It was the end of the world. Like
It was. Mhm.
for people who weren't around back then or weren't old enough to pay
Mhm.
attention. Like we remember Dan Rather coming on the news at night and like, we don't know if the government will open tomorrow. Like, now you look
Mhm.
back and you're like, oh, that wasn't a big deal. It was a very big
Mhm.
deal, when
Mhm.
it was happening, hearing about all the layoffs and things. And kind of the same thing happened to me. I mean, my story is incredibly similar. Had a full-time job. We started buying
Mhm.
houses, fixing and flipping on the weekends. And then the world came to an end. I lost my job. My wife lost her job, and we moved to Chattanooga, with the intention of buying apartments, and ended up having to wholesale. And
Mhm.
luckily that worked out really well.
Well, it was funny because if you remember, no one could get a mortgage. I
Right.
mean, you just couldn't get a mortgage. We went from I remember an agent telling me one time, if they have a job and they're breathing, I can get them a mortgage,
Oh, I
and that
remember.
was really the first sign of trouble. So,
Yeah. Looking back, you're like, how did we not see all these things
yeah,
coming down the road?
really,
You know.
really. So, but it was. I could see myself in a position where I would be stuck with if I had a couple of houses that I had bought, and I just was terrified that I would, I had access to money, but could I find somebody to sell them to and get my money back? I didn't. I was really worried that I wouldn't find an end buyer because it was a nice flip area. So I just called up someone I knew from my RIA and said, I've got a couple of houses. This person still had a W-2 job at a major company, but they had a very robust rehabbing business. And so I said, would you like to buy these properties? I'm going to wholesale them. And he said, well, sure. And I thought, boy, that was easy. 7 or 10 days later, I had my money without any of the headache or the stress of doing the rehab. So I just kept on doing that. And I never intended to not go back to rehabbing. I never intended that, but that's just the way it worked. Life takes you in different ways. And, a couple years later, I started a blog, then I started a podcast, then I started doing small group events. And I
Yeah.
just went down a different path, always with real estate in the background, but your focus sometimes changes.
Sure. Do you ever miss doing rehabs?
Yes, and then I think about all the scary times when you discover something that was as good as you are at figuring how much it's going to cost. All the times you got a surprise. But yes, honestly, I do. I liked rehabbing, but it wasn't an easy thing. It was a hard job.
No, you're right. So, when we came here, I wanted to buy multifamilies, but what were banks doing? They were so busy taking properties
Mm,
back. They were not lending anything.
nope, nope.
So we didn't rehab anything until maybe like 2013 or 14. Once kind of
Mm-hmm,
things picked up just a little bit, then we shifted over and started doing some more rehabs. But yeah,
mm-hmm.
I did solid rehabs for about 5, 6 years, and then but every so often I drive by a house and I'm like, oh, I could fix that, and then I'm like you, oh my god,
No,
what am I thinking?
never mind.
It's fun for like the first 2 weeks when you're tearing it all apart, and the last
Hmm.
first 2 weeks of your life ever. So, um,
Yes.
so you said you kind of got into a little bit of teaching, doing some small group classes.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What?
And yeah, I did. I taught marketing and branding initially, and things happen in weird ways. I had a friend that lived in I guess West Tennessee, and I was in Louisville, so we just said, okay, we'll do these in Nashville. So that was how we chose where we were going to do the events. But
Yeah.
they were small group events, and I just really enjoyed the process of getting people in a room and teaching. It was something I never thought of myself as a teacher
Hmm.
uh, until I was.
Yeah.
But I know you know this. It's very rewarding and it's fun
Yeah.
doing these like small group events and trainings and things like that. So I just kept on kind of down that path and expanded that side of the business.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit about like the marketing and sort of like your thought, because I teach about marketing a little bit too. And one of
Hmm.
I talk about like the basics of marketing. That's kind of one
Hmm.
of the things that I love to talk about. But what was it that you really focused on in these courses, and to try to help people?
Well, like I said, my focus was always off market deals. So I taught the the how to do direct mail the right way, because in the home inspection business, see, people that are around now don't remember that 1991 was really the very start of the internet. And I
Mhm.
can remember somebody saying to me, I've got this .com thing, but I have no idea what to do with it. So I learned how to do direct mail marketing with the first business. And when I started marketing to off market property for off market properties, I just took that knowledge of direct mail and put it into play for those people. And today, with probates, that is still the best way to generate leads that get a response, or generate, to market to them where you get an actual response, because you can do a soft touch marketing um, with them. But I do tell people, and I made an entire business out of probates, but I think for most people, and it's true, I think for everyone, you should have at least 4 or 5 ways to get deals. You should, I think, off markets and direct mail, it was a big part of my business, but it was just one. But
Mhm.
you can pick what you want. Today with websites, your lead generation website is huge.
Yeah.
Networking is huge, because it's not really so much who you know, but who knows you when it comes to people sending you deals. When you know this, when you've been around a long time, people will call you. They know
Yeah.
you. But if you're just getting started, networking, you should think of that not as some fun event you're going to, but as a network with a purpose, whether it's at your RIA or at a different group. You should go at it from I'm going to go build a relationship with a couple of people tonight. And if you're brand spanking new, you might be thinking, well, I don't even have a brand. I don't have anything to offer. But you could say, hey, I'm David.
Mhm.
I'm brand spanking new, but I'm here to learn. Is there anything I could do for you that, maybe I could add value to your world?
That's
So
good.
you can go at it from that tactic, and people will remember that
Yeah.
you did that. So I think with marketing, especially in the real estate world, it's true really everywhere. You know, different is better than better. You get into the better, whether you're making offers and it gets to be a numbers game, and then you're competing on price. When my philosophy has always been to be different than your competition,
Yeah.
be better at what you do, so that they choose you, even if your offer is not the highest offer.
So, I mean, well, let's talk about that because branding. There's definitely a lot of different camps.
Mm-hmm.
Just go with We Buy Houses because that's what everybody understands. And then I've seen other people, do your photo on bus stops and billboards and in commercials, and
Mm-hmm.
so kind of talk about the differences of those, and where that would be more important. I mean, I definitely have some ideas, but
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd be interested to hear your ideas. I think those things. We all remember the bench signs where they had realtors' faces on them, and billboards, and certainly, I guess somewhere bandit signs still work.
oh, I
But
think yeah, they
yeah,
just hate you for it, but they work great.
they work. So, but I think in terms of longevity,
Yeah.
your best bang for your buck is to be a content marketer, to
Hmm.
get yourself known. Now, if you are a real estate investor who says, I'm never doing that, I'm not having a podcast, I'm not having a blog, that's perfectly fine. You can whip out your phone and make short videos and post them on social media, and you can create a powerful brand out of that. It's
Right.
really, I mean, it's very powerful to do that. So you don't have to have any special tools necessarily. People love to see you walk through properties. They love to see what kind of the day in the life type of videos.
Right.
But then when you you'll look down the road and people will know who you are. And I can tell you an example of someone that I know personally. The private money for his deal wasn't going to be returned on time to the lender for him to get the money for his deal. And this person, whose name was Scott, he was always going on Facebook. Scott was the most low tech person you've ever met in your life. He would simply take a picture of a nasty looking house and say,
Yeah.
on my way to work today, guess what I found?
Yeah.
But he consistently posted those things. And on the day that he couldn't get his money to fund his deal, he went on Facebook and said, he just told the story. My lender's not going to get the money back for 3 or 4 days and I have to close tomorrow. Who's willing to loan me $60,000?
Yeah,
Do you know he had not one, not two, but three people
I believe it.
who trusted him because he had built this presence and
Yep,
this person. It wasn't a bad persona, but they knew that he was an actual real estate investor, and he
yep.
got the money for the deal.
It's so funny. Yes, and I was that person in the very beginning. So a
Mm-hmm.
friend of mine he was the first professor hired for social media marketing at University of Tennessee, and he would say, listen, you gotta do videos, you gotta do pictures. I'm like, bro, I have a face for radio. I shouldn't be doing it. Nobody wants to see my big butt walking through a house. But he had told me that for years and years and years, and I never
Mm-hmm.
really did it. I would post a couple of pictures, but I think you're absolutely right with Scott. Is people knew that he was the real estate guy, right? That
Mm-hmm.
he is.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that so often with you know people who they'll reach out to me and want to do business, and I'll click over to their Facebook or Instagram, not a stitch of real estate on there.
Mm-hmm.
Or I
Yeah.
go to a website and I can't even find who the owner is of a company,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some
Right.
stuff website, and I'm like, who wants to do business with that person? People want to do
Mm-hmm.
business with people they know, like, and trust. So yeah, no, you're 100% right, and especially the direction we're moving in with social media,
Mm-hmm.
you have to have a presence out there, and it is just as easy as turning on your phone and going, "Hey
Mm-hmm.
guys, we're gonna walk through this house today. I don't know if I'm gonna buy it.
Mm-hmm.
What you think underneath, and let me just give you a little bit of a tour."
Mm-hmm.
People,
And
yeah, go
they
ahead.
love that. They love if you've got a rehab in progress.
Mm,
You can never be on camera, but you can also just pop your camera up and say, "Hey, it's Sharon. I'm going to flip it around and show you where we are today." It can really be that simple. And the funny thing is, we've all been at the point where you said I have a face for radio. It
mhm.
took me the first time somebody asked me to make a training video for them, a 15-minute training video. It took me 2 days because I did 100 takes, and
Yeah,
at the end, I went, you know what? It's good enough for government work. I can't do this anymore. But it does get easier. But I like
sure,
to tell people if you're living inside your comfort zone, you are not growing. You have
right.
got to get uncomfortable to
Yeah.
grow.
100%. What I remember,
Mhm.
you know, now I've got this big following on, Instagram and YouTube
Mhm.
and Facebook, and people think you've always been like that. Well, it was not
Mhm.
always that way. I remember 3 or 4 years ago, I was at an event, a very small private mastermind during COVID, right? And they were running around with cameras. I'm like, dude, I can't be on.
Mhm.
I don't want to be on camera. I can't. Da, 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 da.
Mhm.
I didn't even like speaking in public. And then
Mhm.
Zoom first came out, I would get like myself so wound up. I'd be stuttering for 2 hours before I had to get on this
Mhm.
Zoom.
Mhm.
I'd be just so afraid of it, but it is a muscle. It's just you just
Mhm.
have to work it and sort of break through that fear. But it's so important, right? It's so important because now people know that you're a trusted source. And
Mhm.
the fear that I always had is, well, what do I have to talk about?
Mhm.
And the getting over that part, hopefully this will resonate with some people, is we're all amazing at something, right? There's all something,
Mhm.
you're good at marketing and probate. I'm really great at dispositions, transactions, but
Mhm.
there's something that you're really good at, and that's what you share. When I speak
Mhm.
on stage, that's what I think to myself. If there's one or two people here that I can make some kind of an impact with, then this was a win.
Mhm.
And that you just have to look at it that way.
You have to look at it that way, and you should be building a personal brand
Yeah,
because, like you said, people do business with people they know, like, and trust. They
right.
will probably never remember your company name, but
No,
if you can connect with them, they will remember who you are and they'll remember what you said. So it's important from a branding perspective to always um, just be yourself, share your beliefs, and I think you attract the people that are meant to come and be with you, and you repel those that you're not a fit for. So it really is a perfect world. You just have to show up as yourself, your best version of yourself, but
yeah,
build a personal brand.
yeah, authenticity for sure. You're not
Mm-hmm.
going to appeal to everybody, right? There,
Yeah.
there are going to be people that appeal to the young kids, the young kids that want to have Lambos and Rolexes and gold chains, right? Like that's a,
Hmm. Right.
I always assume like, I'm old and cuddly, right? So I'm like trustworthy, and people that are over 30, watch my nonsense. But yeah, I mean, there's somebody out there, and that there are people just like all of us, and you'll attract that
Hmm.
audience. So I think that's a fantastic message. I love it. So So talk about probates. How did you kind of weave your way into that?
I stumbled upon probates in 2008. I really had no knowledge at all of probates.
Hmm.
And I stumbled upon them. And then I realized that at that time, especially, the leads were hard to get. So, which meant that there would be a lot less people working in the niche of probates.
Yeah.
So I just dug in and spent a few years figuring it all out, and it took me a few years. And finally, when I had systems and had really learned all the things around probate, then I created a course around it so that people wouldn't have to go through the misery of what I had done. So that's kind of how it came about. But I love probates because you get the opportunity to help so many people.
Yeah.
They're in a part of their life where they've had something sad happen, but the reality of it is that they have to take care of the business of settling the estate.
Right.
And, it's a legal process. So we can be there to help them through this time in their life. And when I tell people I've gotten more hugs at probate closings than any other type of closing, that's the absolute truth.
Wow. So, obviously, so probate, somebody's passed away. There's,
Hmm.
somebody has to appoint an executor. Sometimes it's a court process. Sometimes it's right, but they definitely have to
Hmm.
dispose of that property.
Hmm.
So, and this is all public record. I'm assuming that's how you just pull a list of people who've
You
recently.
you can pull a list today. There are finally most of the places are online, but even 8, 9, 10 months ago, many of the cities you had to actually go to the courthouse. In Louisville, until 7 or 8 months ago, you had to get the names out of the newspaper, which
Yeah.
were published once a month.
Oh my.
So that's all rapidly changed in the past, less than a year. But
Wow.
yes, it's a matter of public record. So now it's a lot easier. The number one mail piece to reach them with is a white computer generated letter that says, "Dear David, I'm contacting you about the estate of, and here's the address." They're used to getting mail,
Mhm.
from attorneys, so they will open those letters and they get very upset, like some other types of direct mail, if they get tricked kind of into like an invitation envelope, and then they see somebody wants to buy their property that belonged to their mama. I always
Yeah.
tell people, remember, somebody's mama died.
Right.
So I don't know. But it's a great niche. The people need our help, and there is a steady stream of leads every single month.
Wow. No, I think you're right, and that makes perfect sense because
Mm-hmm.
in the other types of our marketing, where we're just marketing to absentee owners or upset
Mm-hmm.
landlords, whatever, like the invitation thing works great. I'm sure you remember
Mm-hmm.
Kathy
Right.
Kennedy way back in the day. Was it
Mm-hmm.
direct mail magic or anyways? Like she would talk about that because you got to
Mm-hmm.
get their attention. But no, that makes perfect sense in probates. So when you're talking to them, like what are some kind of tips that you could pass on to people who want to talk to or need to talk to somebody like, hey, I'm sorry, grandma died, or is it just like how are you approaching that conversation?
You don't even mention it. You just they'll call you, and sometimes they'll say, "How did you get
Mhm.
my information?" And you just say, it's a matter of public record, and this is what we specialize in, is helping people that are stuck with the settling the estate. You just explain what you do and then move on. But by the time you get to the property to look at the property, you just simply pretend you're there for any other type of deal. You introduce yourself, and then you go in, and I tell people to look for visual clues. So if you know someone's dad has passed away and you see golf clubs in the corner, you might say, "Oh, did was your dad the golfer?"
Mhm.
It doesn't matter if they say yes or no. You've just opened the conversation.
Right.
If it is yes, then you have something to say. If it's no, that they'll say, "No, they belong to my brother, or they were in the garage." And maybe if you see cookbooks, you'll say, "Oh, was your mom a great cook?"
Yeah.
But you can look at the things that are in the house. You can look at the pictures that are hanging on the walls, but just look for visual clues as a way to start the conversation, and then say, "Would you like to tell me about the property?" Very open ended, and
Right.
they will almost always tell you a story at that point. Like, my parents raised me in this house.
Mhm.
And, we had all these Christmases here. And then my mom continued to live here for years after my dad passed. But they'll tell you a story and then they'll point out something that's important to them. They'll say, come on, let me show you the house.
Yeah.
But you never ever talk about what actually happened,
Interesting.
if that makes sense.
Sure. Sure. Well, I think that's something that so many newer investors get nervous
Hmm.
about is, well, what do I say? Same thing with like
Hmm.
foreclosure. Like, what do
Right.
I say? Do I bring it up? Do I not? And mine is always just treat them like they're just anybody else. You don't need to,
Hmm.
if it's foreclosure, you don't need to embarrass them and say, hey,
Hmm.
the bank's going to take your property. Right? Just, hey,
Right.
how can I help you? How can I serve you? What can I do for you?
Hmm.
That type of
At the
stuff.
end of the day, they all have a problem, whether it's foreclosures or probates. They have a problem, and we are at the very core of problem solvers as real estate investors.
Nice. So, are you still doing a lot of like coaching and teaching and seminars
Mhm.
or events?
I'm doing well. The seminars, I kind of quit doing those during COVID. I'm back. I do go up to Chicago 3 times a year for a conference where I teach probates, and I still do all of those things. I still like doing all of those things, and for me, it's exciting to get to meet the people and see the people and do all of that. But yes, I still do coach, and I teach through the course in different ways. But
Right.
I told somebody the other day, you can sell courses all day long, but you
Right.
can't teach people to be successful if you're not really invested in their success.
Right.
So that's where I get my joy from.
Right. Well, that's why you're such a good coach. So, of all the ways to people to find you, there's the podcast. What's
Hmm.
the name of the podcast?
Let's talk real estate investing.
Love it. And you said 400 episodes. My
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah, I'm at about almost 450.
Oh,
Almost 450. Yeah.
wow. You did bring up earlier how things have changed so much. I can't imagine any of these resources had
Mm-mm.
any of them been around in 2002, how or 2000, 1998,
Yeah.
how our life would have been different, and how did people do it like before before the
It was
internet?
it, it was so hard. It was
Yeah.
all so hard.
Yeah.
And even I told somebody the other day, if you're going to start a podcast today, there are so many resources that show you here's how to do it. We
Yeah.
literally, I had no idea how to do it. I had a VA, he set it up all wrong. And it was just, there's power though in being scrappy in
Sure.
just doing it. And I look back on it, and whether it's the blog or the podcast, there's not a single one of them I would do the same way today. But
Right.
we didn't have the internet back then. We just, I can remember. You can probably remember when there were one or two big conferences a
Yeah.
year for real estate investors. There weren't things all over the place.
Every weekend there's something, and then there's
Yeah.
five you don't even know about, and
Right.
there's so many different little
Mm-hmm.
bubbles of influence. But Sharon, it's funny, and hopefully you can relate to this. Sometimes I'll lay in bed and I'll go, God, if I'd have just started this when I was in college in
Mm-hmm.
1991 or 92. And I was talking to Lou Brown, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
Lou, how on earth did you do real estate in
Mm-hmm.
19, like, how did you comp it? Like, how did you figure anything out? He's like, oh, we went to the newspaper and looked at what
Mm-hmm.
houses in that area were selling for, and we just based it off of that. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, my goodness. See, so
Mm-hmm.
resourceful, and it makes sense because there was no prop stream, there was no list source, there was no,
No,
none of these things to
none of it.
and comp properties. I do think God, it's really easy now compared to what it was when we started. Like I had literally door knocking, yellow letters, those handwritten yellow letters, and bandit sign.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
It's so easy. In fact, I told somebody the other day, we used to print our direct mail in house, and I
Hmm.
had a girl named Becky
Yeah.
who she would hand address the envelopes, fold
Mhm.
my mail, and stuff the
Yeah.
envelopes. And when Becky went to college, and then she was a grad student, and we laugh about it now, but when she had her graduation party, she invited me to it, and her mother thanked me for employing her. And I said, "Are you kidding? She saved my life."
Yeah.
I mean, because it was so hard back then. And today, you can, just to give people an idea. So in 2008, it cost $1.50 to send a letter, like a professional letter through a mail house, and stamps were 30 some cents.
Yeah.
Today, they're what? I don't even know, something 68 cents or something ridiculous.
They're about to go up
You
again.
can, yeah. So coming up on 70 cents for a stamp, you can literally outsource your direct mail for a dollar 18 per letter. You think about that. $1.50 in 2008 and $1.18 now. You don't have to do it. You can
Yeah.
get a list. You can upload your list to the mail house. They'll send out your mail for you, and then
Yeah.
you can focus on doing the deals or negotiating whatever your fun part of the business is, and you
Yeah.
can leave the rest to somebody else. We didn't have that luxury.
Yeah. No, no, none of that was there. And there's so
No.
many done for you services now where you
Mm-hmm.
can just kind of focus on the stuff that's
Mm-hmm.
important. So, well, cool. Sharon, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
They can reach me at sharon@sharonvornholt.com. That's my email.
Yeah.
I also have that site. The blog is a good place to start. I have something around 1,000 pieces of content on the blog,
Yeah.
Louisville Gals Real Estate blog, and there's a link off to the podcast. There's a link off to the probate course, Probate Investing Simplified. So that's really the hub of where everything is.
Okay, cool. I'll make sure that we put all of this down in the show notes so
Mm-hmm.
that you guys can connect with Sharon because I really enjoyed chatting with you. It's not too often that I get to talk to somebody who's been around since since Bert was being turned for the first time because that's
Yeah,
how
you're making me feel really old here.
I feel that way with some of these young kids. I go to an event and these 14-year-old kids are making 300,000 a month, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life, right? But
Hmm.
they're
Yeah,
not
but
14, but they look so
where
young.
did we where did we go wrong, right?
I know. Well, we blaze the trail so that they can all be here doing this. Well, Sharon, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. We had a good chat,
Hmm.
and we will definitely make sure that people are connecting with you.
Well, thank you so much. It was great fun.